Hey everybody, this is Minion Soldier, and this is the Piracy Show. And so, something to watch while we're all waiting for Age of Empires 4 to finish downloading and installing. Yes, so last episode we're talking about the idea of the dupe loop, the ability to infinitely generate wealth. And of course, some people obviously did not agree with me. But the primary idea here, and yes, I did see the criticism. I went back and I checked it and I was like, oh, okay, yes. So if someone takes your ship and logs off with it, it is, it disappears. I went, oh, okay. But also within that same article where they're talking to Will somebody back in 2018, they also said that the player can still sell the ship for scrap or obviously potentially salvage the ship. And so we're still talking about the idea of one player transferring wealth to another player, whether voluntarily or involuntarily, but then still having that wealth restored to them, right? So it's a very interesting problem. It's a very interesting idea. One of the potential solutions could be that, yeah, indeed, the ships are almost just a platform for equipment. And the equipment is where the real cost and the real price comes in. And that could be interesting because, a lot of the equipment that we've seen so far is very run-of-the-mill. And if we were to use a kind of classic MMO definition, could this be the equivalent of just basic equipment? And then as you build up your reputation with ArcCorp or the Ninetales or whatnot, you get access to what would be the equivalent of uncommons, rares, epics, legendaries, or something like that. Could we move along those lines where the real wealth is generated on those items? It's possible. And ships could become almost immaterial. It's just like, oh, yeah, I lost my ship, but it doesn't matter. I'm more worried about the mods, which aren't insured, and so on and so forth. That could be, an interesting way that it plays out. Though you would kind of end up in a place not unlike Tarkov or games like that, where it's, well, here's my bargain basement loadout that I go to earn the real money, and then anything that's really worth anything, I just end up selling it on, just to make more cash. It's possible that that could play out that way. It's very difficult to tell. And obviously, whenever you make a video like that and you speculate on things, it's totally fair to criticize it. It's absolutely fair to criticize any idea because it's, we're mulling over ideas. We're exploring what is possible within these systems. What these systems will eventually allow is pretty much up in the air, because realistically, one of the biggest criticisms against CIG is they have large ideas, or they've conceptualized basically how they're going to handle certain things, but from concept to live it can be a long, and obviously it's been a long and winding road with a lot of diversions along the way. So what we could end up with could be nothing like it was conceptualized. It raises a lot of interesting issues. And one of the other fair criticisms that you can kind of come to with this is that how can you really predict what's going to happen? How can you look at things and say, oh, this is going to be like this, or this is going to be like that? Just recently talking about Pyro. Oh, obviously smuggling is going to be a thing. Oh, salvage is going to be a good moneymaker. Making statements like that, how can you make them? And once again, it's theoretical, but I would say it's theory based on experience. Often when new areas open up in games, developers will incentivize players to travel to those new areas. Sometimes, even if some people might look at PvP and say like, oh man, I don't know, I'm not really sure about PvP, but a well-designed game can, even when you have full loot and you have the possibility of loss, if a game is very well designed and the losses are balanced, if you think of a ship like the Carrack being very expensive in game, 25 million, 27, whatever it is, I think it's somewhere in there. Correct me in the comments below. If you think of that as being very expensive, it could be tiny compared to what the rewards of engaging in PvP or earning reputations and unlocking certain options or certain rewards for every enemy player or whatnot that you might kill. If those rewards are good enough, players will willingly engage in PvP. And even sometimes players who ordinarily wouldn't pick up PvP will kind of dip into it. And generally when you make systems like that rewarding on that level and not as punishing, you find a lot more people willing to dip their toes into stuff like that. For a lot of people, they think that game development is something that happens entirely removed from the players that the game is being developed for or the intended audience. And so a lot of companies, they kind of tend to hold things back. And that's where Star Citizen, to a certain degree, with certain elements of it, is a lot different than most game developers, because you are playing a very raw, very basic, and as the recording of this video, incomplete version of the game. And they might say, oh, you shouldn't say anything. Leave it alone. Don't raise any concerns. Don't say anything. The developers don't need to hear from you. If you had anything worthwhile to say, you would be a game developer. But that's an entirely idiotic point of view, because it's players ultimately that put the game to the test, and it's players that ultimately decide whether the game lives or dies. And player behaviors, even by the most enthusiastic players, can in fact destroy the very game that they're playing. To give an example, a brief preview of a video that I still have yet to do. I discussed the fact that I had quit World of Warcraft towards the end of June. And I said that, at some point in the future, I'm going to make a video about this. And I'm going to be talking about this. And the reason why is because there was the very big open controversy that was going on at Blizzard. And I suspected, and I believe I said this in the video, is I suspected that all the wrong lessons were going to be learned, and that this was going to be blamed for World of Warcraft's current predicament rather than the actual cause of the problem. And not to diminish this big controversy or the seriousness of the issues, but I was basically pointing out that if people believe that these two things are, one directly caused the other, that's a false assumption. And the problem with the game had nothing to do with behavior within the workplace. And I still have yet to, kind of really dig into that, because I'm just kind of waiting for all that stuff to kind of cool down, and then we'll come back to it at some point in the future. But for me, one of the big drawbacks, one of the things that really kind of threw me out, was the idea that the game itself was entirely compromised. The integrity of the game was compromised, and it wasn't by the behaviors of developers. It was in fact something that emerged within the community, and it was basically boosting. The boosting culture that took over the game ruined the integrity of the game for me. And I was at a point where I had just finished an achievement that I was trying to get completely solo, doing it with nothing but pugging, you know, picking up groups. And I had finished it, you know, almost right down to the wire, but I had gotten it completed, and I was very proud of myself, you know. And I mean, I just kind of shared that with members of the guild that I was in. And one of the replies that I got was like, "That's so stupid. Why would you do that? You could have just bought it for like $100 or whatever." And it was just, why would I do that? I was like, it's easier, it's faster. Why go through all that crap when you can? And that's when it kind of really sunk home to me that the entire game just really was entirely compromised. There were other achievements that I knew. You know, I knew that the ranked PvP ladder, especially in ranked battlegrounds, was entirely compromised and filled with win trading groups. And that kind of ruined other aspects of the game. I had always wanted to go after the general title, at least getting up to the rank of general. But, you know, what's the point when I can just pay someone to do it for me, or pay someone to be allowed into a group that'll just get it for me? And that's one of the big things that I kind of watchdog for, is exploitation. And I talk about these things in a lot of videos, and some people are like, "Oh, you just want to exploit because you're a pirate." And it's like, no. To me, one of the core and most important things about a game is its integrity. That the achievements within the game, whether marked by an official title or just for having been done, that the integrity of those achievements remains in place. Because if it doesn't, then the prestige and the sense of accomplishment is eroded away. And when you get to that point, the entire enterprise is pointless. It's this bizarre paradox in the gamer world where certain items or certain achievements within a game, certain prestigious things, are highly valued by the game community, so much so that people are willing to pay real money for them. But at the point where people know that people are paying real money or cheating the system for those achievements or for whatever that prestigious item may be, the prestige of the original item, in fact, is diminished. You see what I'm saying? And so whenever I see things like this that could be, you know, problematic, that kind of puts me a little bit on edge, and I start to get a little worried when I see stuff like that.
Thank you for watching. So if you want to keep up with the latest and greatest in Star Citizen and Squadron 42's development, please follow us on our social media channels. See you soon.